As the mayor of the town of Clayton, I'd like to call this Clayton Town Council meeting to order. I'd like to ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the many blessings of this day. And we ask, Lord, now that you be with us as we proceed with the business for the town of Clayton. For it's in your great name we pray. Amen. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, sir, there's not.
Thank you. But your consent agenda?
Move we approve.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, up next under public hearings will be our first public hearing, 2020-23-ANX shops at Glen Laurel annexation.
Good evening, Samantha Woolen-Weber, Planning Director. This is the annexation request from the developer at Shops at Glen Laurel. This is the additional land that was added at their master plan modification a few weeks ago at the previous town council meeting. Again, this is just to annex the property. It will go in conjunction with the rest of the property that is already in town limits. Okay. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for staff? All right, if not, this has been noted as a public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak, please step forward and state your name. No one wishing to speak, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the council for their discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we adopt ordinance 2020-09-05.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of the ordinance 2020-0905. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, and motion carries. The next public hearing is 2020-115-ANX West End annexation.
Good evening, Council. Samantha Woolen-Weber, Planning Director again. This is another annexation request. This is for what we refer to as the West End Shopping Center. This was approved at the Planning Board this year. It is going to be a strip mall of sorts, and it was two separate buildings. And again, they do have their site plan approval, and they have applied for a building permit. And they are requesting to annex because they will have town services, and this will be a contiguous annexation. This is the Lee property, Hubert and his wife. Hubert Lee. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments for staff? All right, if not, I'll open the public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak on this, please step forward and state your name for the record. No one wishing to speak, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the council for their discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we adopt ordinance 2020-09-06.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adoption of the ordinance 2020-0906. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Up next is the public hearing on the erosion control ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Joshua Baird, Town Engineer. Susan Lockley, our Stormwater Engineer, would typically be with me tonight as she's done a lot of work putting this together and a lot of the forefront work in getting this out and putting it together, but had an item come up past couple weeks, so she's unable to be here, but we're going to keep moving forward with it here, and I'll be available to answer any questions regarding it. On July 20th, we brought a draft ordinance to you. We provided an update as far as where we're at with moving forward with stormwater and erosion control programs. I'm going to back up just a little bit, and since this is a public hearing, I'm going to kind of give some additional background on just what is erosion, what is sedimentation. So we're just going to walk through this real quickly, and then we can get into any further questions there may be. Again, this here site just shows existing development. You can see the roads there outlined and before construction started, and obviously when these development comes through, trees are cleared, and when they're cleared and grubbed, it opens it up for soil to be eroded from the site. When it rains, the energy from the rain can erode and displace some of the soil particles. That's the form of erosion. And then sedimentation would be rain and stormwater carrying that sediment off-site or moving it and displacing it from the site. Again, our goal was to, throughout the construction process, ensure and keep all sediment on site throughout the construction process. Sorry, I went the wrong way. This here, you can see a picture of sediment leaving some home site construction here, getting into the right-of-way, getting into the road. From here, it can be conveyed to the storm drains. Vehicle traffic and other traffic will pick it up on their tires and then carry it out. So this is one of the things that we're trying to avoid with the proposed ordinance. Another picture here you can see of silty water flowing over a silt fence and entering a conveyance here, a drainage conveyance. And eventually most of this leads to a stream. Here you can see a stream, and you can see where the runoff from the construction sites mix in with the existing stream. Not to say this is never going to happen. Certainly certain soils, the properties of the soil are more conducive. Sometimes you will have a turbidity such as this, and it may not be real fine, or it could be larger sediment. But again, not to say we're never going to keep this from happening, but this is one of the things that we would like to try to avoid with the proposed ordinance. Some additional background: there are state and federal requirements for sediment. In the state, at the state level, you have the North Carolina Sediment Pollution Control Act. Won't get into the specifics of these. That was in 1973. And then also NPDES, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. At the federal level, you have NCG 01 and NCG 25 that relate to construction stormwater. So there are state and federal requirements that construction must adhere to. What is a delegated local erosion sediment control program? The state delegates enforcement of these acts to certain jurisdictions. There's a process that must be adhered to where the local jurisdiction can oversee the land disturbing activity. There are some exemptions: agricultural, mining, forestry. It requires a plan approval and then implementation of that plan. Another component of that delegated program is education and outreach. Once the delegated authority has the jurisdiction and the delegated authority to administer the program, there are audits. There are phase 2 audits associated with it, as well as audits by DMLR for a local erosion sediment control program. A little bit of history between town of Clayton and Johnston County. In the 1990s, Johnston County was part of the nutrient sensitive waters program. They were named in that. In 2012, the town of Clayton became a phase 2 permit holder, which did have a construction component to that, construction stormwater. In 2012, Clayton delegated construction site runoff controls and the post-construction controls to Johnston County. In 2014, Johnston County established a local erosion sediment control program. They received that delegation to administer the program. The same year, Clayton relinquished the right to operate that program to the county, and the county has been administrating these programs since 2014, and stormwater prior to that. So what are the benefits of bringing this in-house? Obviously, an internal control of compliance. Increased level of service. Currently, the county has different, and they're subject to different regulations than we are. We are a phase 2 community, they are not. So there are differences in what the reviewers are looking at. There's, the county currently has one inspector for the entire county that also does work in Clayton, and so being able to bring that program in-house, having the expertise, having the staff here to be able to work through and just provide that level of service, have local staff that can be available when questions come up. Again, a streamlined permit process for developers. This is where developers would not have to go to the county for a separate permit as they come through the town for construction drawings, site plans. They would also be coming through the town for erosion control permits and grading permits. And again, the ultimate goal of just healthy streams and having clean roads around town. So the process to obtain the formal delegation is to obtain a model ordinance from land quality section. The town has done that. We've created a local ordinance and supporting documentation. We've submitted to the state, to Demler staff, as well as gone through an informal review by the Sedimentation Control Commission. The next step is for council to adopt this as a local ordinance. Once that's done, we will go back to the state, North Carolina Sedimentation Control Commission, and request the formal delegation. We anticipate doing that on November 5th. The next meeting for them is November 5th. And then we'll implement the program, and we're shooting for January 1st, 2021 to implement the program. Just kind of a quick synopsis here, the proposed ordinance. It is based on the state's model ordinance. It's very similar to Johnston County and other delegated local jurisdictions. Since all of the programs are based on the state's model ordinance, there's going to be a lot of similarities between ours and other jurisdictions, and the goal is to meet the requirements of both the state and the at the federal level. Just some kind of quick components that are in the ordinance. It requires plan submittals. It requires someone to be financial responsible party. There are sureties involved to ensure that the site, once it's disturbed, once it's opened up, open graded, that someone's going to stabilize that, provide some vegetation. And so there is a surety if they were to walk away that the town does have some means and ability to ensure that that site gets adequate ground cover and adequate vegetation cover so that it does not continue to be a problem. There's design and performance standards, maintenance, and outlines inspections by the contractor, by that financial responsible person, as well as the town. So moving forward, next steps would be to proceed with adoption of this ordinance. Again, on November 5th, assuming Town Council adopts the ordinance, we would go back to State Sedimentation Control Commission to request the formal delegation. Following that, we would ask Town Council to adopt a fee schedule and some additional policies for implementation January 1st, 2021. Regarding the fees, again, at this time tonight, we're just asking council to adopt the ordinance. That's the step that we have to do in order for us to go back to State Sedimentation Control Commission. But I just want to hit on fees. Again, we will be bringing these back. This here is a list of local jurisdiction and their fees. You can see Johnston County's fee there, which developers would be currently subject to, $330 per acre for the first 10 acres and $110 for each additional acre. Moving forward, when we come back to council, we anticipate and plan to bring a similar fee schedule such as this at Johnston County, such there's not any significant change for the developers in Clayton. From there, we would be kind of kickstart that, and then we would reevaluate in future years as far as the fees. And with that, I'll take any questions on the proposed ordinance.
Questions or comments?
Josh, that fee schedule, can you put that back up again? You're talking about coming back to us for a fee schedule for Clayton, like Johnston County, correct?
Yes, sir.
Which is pretty much higher than anybody on the board, correct?
So the jurisdictions do it a couple different ways. Johnston County has one fee at the basically plan review, or excuse me, at the permit. They combine any kind of review and the permit. A lot of jurisdictions will break it up. And so by the time it's said and done, you're looking at a permit and a plan review fee. So for take Wake County, you're really looking at $500 per acre once you formally get to construction. Once you get through the plan review and then a separate grading permit. Johnston County just does one fee. So Wake County's higher, Raleigh's higher. You
can see where I got that from. By just looking at it, it looks like everybody's cheaper but Johnston County.
Yes, I understand. And it's the way they're structured. So Johnston County is one of the few that actually breaks it up into one fee, where a lot of jurisdictions break it up into two, a permit, a grading permit, and a plan review fee.
I got you. Thank you.
Josh, I got a few questions, if I may. With respect to natural water courses, would a swale or a ditch on the side of a road be considered a natural water course, or no?
Which specific section are you referring to? If I'm not mistaken, I think,
It's actually on page
Definition?
61, well, page 10 of
I just want to be sure I tell you in context and give you the correct information here. Which page?
page 10 of the document. Item 6. Actually, I lied. It's page, it's number 13. Hold on just a second, I'll get there. Number 13, discharge point or point of discharge. They refer to, means that point where runoff leaves a tract of land and where land disturbing activity has occurred or enters a lake or a natural water course. Now below, it says water course means any stream, river, brook, swamp, sound, bay, creek, run, branch, canal, waterway, estuary, and any reservoir, lake, or pond.
Yes, the intent would be any form of, so the ditch would fall under that. Do you have concerns about that, or?
Well, I was just curious if like, we have a couple of developments that have swales, and then we also have what I'm going to choose to call ditches on either side of a road. Let me use Covered Bridge Road as an example. Would that be considered a natural water course?
Yes, I believe that would fall under that. One other thing to note as far as other upcoming ordinances is a stormwater ordinance. And so associated with stormwater ordinance, we would also be looking at detention. And so looking at the downstream conveyance features would also be a part of a proposed stormwater ordinance that we plan to bring before you in the future.
Okay. Then on page 10, item 6, dewatering, the town shall forward to the Director of the Division of Water Resources a copy of each plan for a land disturbing activity that involves the utilization of ditches for the purpose of dewatering or lowering the water table of the tract. Does that in any way relate to the possibility of developing a hydrology report? I believe developers are required to provide hydrology reports.
So any development would be required to have a calculations associated with their plan, ensuring the performance and the measures that are in here. This here is referring to development that would be geared really toward draining the water table if there's a high water table. And the concern here would be if there's existing wetlands in the vicinity or adjacent, if they're putting in ditches to really lower the water table, they may be affecting some jurisdictional features that would be claimed by the Corps, some wetlands that would be adjacent to it or in the vicinity. So that's where that is coming from, is really geared towards a practice that is looking to drain the water table by intercepting that via a ditch. And the concern here is if there's adjacent jurisdictional features may be drained as well through that lowering of the water table.
And Josh, if I may, this is, and I don't know if you explained post-construction or not, but this is the construction phase type related activity. So this would be dewatering, so something would be created or built, and then there would be a post-construction runoff program, which this is not concerning that yet. You'll bring something back later that says, what does it happen if you have to permanently dewater the site? Where now you're creating a permanent stream. So they're kind of handled in two different steps, if I may, and this is the construction phase step, right?
Certainly. Yes, thanks, sir.
Okay, that makes sense. Next item is on page 12, 156.206, timeline for your decisions. I'm curious, it says failure to approve or approve with modifications or disapprove a complete plan within 30 days of receipt shall be deemed an approval. You comfortable with that?
Well, I mean, there's a personal side of that, and as well, I understand and certainly understand your concern with that. That is, that's a standard that is in the model ordinance. There's I believe it is in, can't recall if it's in the state NC, which one it is, but it is in some of the other state and federal documents and acts. I believe that is the case, and so that is. I don't believe we have much choice in that, but no, I agree and I understand what you're coming from. But
So we don't have a choice in that.
I don't know the specific reference, but there is something that comes down from the state that is an option that if we do not respond to it, if we have the authority and we do not respond, is an automatic approval.
I'm not going to not vote for this, but I think that would be nice to maybe look
I can
at,
provide
because we
reference.
can always come back and make an amendment if we
Yes, sir.
have the authority to do that.
Yes.
Okay?
Joshua, if I can jump in there just real quick.
Yes, please.
That was run up to the
Microphone, because I can't hear you.
okay. That was run up to the state in the informal review, and the response back to Susan, I've seen the email and I don't recall who it was you can't change that. And I don't have the sites or anything, but just so you know, it was attempted to be changed in the review that went up on the informal basis. And the response back, one of the feedbacks from the informal review was that was not a point that the town could not include in their ordinance. We can certainly revisit it. We didn't, but we can revisit it to look at even more, but from the state's perspective, it's not anything you have discretion on.
Yeah, and if I may add too, and Joshua, you correct me, but I think because it's already with Johnston County, they're doing this in our jurisdiction anyway, right? So if they don't see it in 30 days, it becomes automatic
That's
for
correct.
us. So one advantage of us having it is we control the 30 days now and control the review.
Yeah, and I can provide you that reference. There's a reference out there. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can follow up with that.
Okay. Page 22, exceptions. The rule shall not apply where it can be demonstrated to the town that stormwater discharge velocities will not create an erosion problem in the receiving water course. To me, that seems risky, but is that, again, like a standard?
Yes, sir. That's a part of the model ordinance that's provided by the state. I can tell you that it would take a lot to demonstrate that to us. There would have to be extensive calculations, and I think that would be a difficult one to do. But this was a part of the model ordinance that the state wanted to see in our program, is that option.
Okay. The last question I have is on page 23, which refers to 156.900. It gives us the responsibility for maintenance or the development of a site. The person conducting the land disturbing activity shall install and maintain all temporary and permanent erosion and sedimentation control measures as required by the approved plan or any provision of this ordinance, the act, or any other adopted pursuant to this ordinance or act. After site development, the landowner or person in possession or control of the land shall maintain all necessary permanent stormwater post-construction measures per the town's NPDES Phase 2 permit, except those measures installed within a road or a street or right-of-way or easement accepted for maintenance by the governmental property. Since we're given that responsibility to the person conducting the land disturbing activity, do we follow up with that at all?
Do we follow up to ensure that the maintenance is
That they're doing
performed?
it? Yeah.
Yes. So there will be a series of inspections that are done. We are working with staff and educating them on what to look for, such that anytime we have staff, whether it be building inspections, engineering staff, they're on site, they're going to be looking to ensure that the measures are being maintained, as well as we will be doing periodic specific inspections related to the erosion control. So we will be ensuring that it is maintained.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right. So this has been noted as a public hearing, so anyone wishing to speak on this matter, please step forward and state your name for the record. No one wishing to speak, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the council for their consideration.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-09-07 erosion control.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second for adoption of the ordinance 2020-0907. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign. Motion carries. All right, up next under old business is the fire department ladder truck.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Lee Barbie, Fire Chief. During the fiscal year 2021 budget meeting, council requested more details regarding a ladder truck purchase for the fire department. The ladder truck has been listed as a need for the town of Clayton for nearly a quarter century, since 1997. On two separate occasions, staff and council discussed purchasing a used ladder truck, and both times the town deferred that opportunity. Members of the Clayton Fire Department, back in time, we have tried to find ways to compensate for the absence of a ladder truck. Many years ago, when a lot of apartment buildings were starting to be built in Clayton, the fire marshal and myself met with developers and pushed for fire sprinklers well before the building code updates now require fire sprinklers. Two examples of that is the Mead Garden Apartments and Village Garden Apartments. To me, that is, over time, that's been a success story for the town of Clayton, not only for the fire safety, but saving the citizens of our community as tax dollars. We've worked very hard over the years to build great relationship with our neighboring fire departments. We've collaborated with neighboring towns to utilize staffed, and when I say staffed, I mean 4 or 5 man ladder companies, people with the ladder through mutual aid agreements. And that included Raleigh Fire Department. We've had an agreement with Station 26 for ladder 26. We've had an agreement with Garner Station 1 for their ladder, and now Cleveland responds with us. We've had numerous fires over the years. That mutual aid ladder was a big benefit to us. Garner has joked with me for years that they fought more fires in Clayton than they have in Garner with theirs. Those are good stopgap measures, but they're becoming less reliable. Our mutual aid companies, neighboring mutual aid companies are growing themselves. Their call volume is going up, so that's becoming less dependable. A ladder truck makes accessing upper levels of roofs and buildings much safer for our firefighters, but it also helps in rescue, and I think y'all will see that today in the demonstration we had. In addition to the safety and response improvements, a dedicated ladder also brings insurance savings. Over the years, through the growth we've had and the changes, those insurance benefits are changing because we do not get credits through DOI for mutual aid agreements for ladder trucks. The inspection criteria has changed, so we're having to adapt to that change with it. The addition of the ladder truck in our response district would bring economic benefit to our community through insurance savings to our local businesses and industry. It's our own growth that has pushed the critical need for a ladder at this time. When we did a DOI inspection in 2012, we had done a map, we had put a map together and had over 72 buildings that required a ladder. That was in 2012. We've kind of since then quit counting because we know there is a ladder need. We know there's more than one ladder need in our district. So we know the buildings are here. Some of our local industries, it's the on campus itself requires a ladder. And we're working with those local industries to help us out, but we're not there yet. I'm still working with them. But we're at a crossroads for future development. During the staff retreat, we discussed how we could grow, how we wanted to grow, and how we were focused on that growth. And that puts pressure on the fire department to maintain that level. We know that the growth can be of value to Clayton, and we work with other town departments to accommodate that. With the new developments, we've even signed letters in the past to help with that, but we're at a point that I just don't think that's feasible anymore. We need a ladder in our district. So, the current pricing that I have in your council package is based on a ladder truck that was delivered to Pineville Fire Department in North Carolina. And it was through the Houston-Galveston Area Council Consortium. We've used this opportunity for many years for vehicle replacements. The pricing that I have in your package is $1,792,242,000. That number is good through September 30th. That's why I'm here before you tonight. We need to move on this. If not, there's going to be a price increase. In your package, there is a quote from Financial Freedom, who is through the vendor. There's two options you have with that. If we were to secure the financing through them, we can do a prepay of, you receive a discount of $49,000 with that prepayment, and your payment would begin 12 months after that. Or you could choose not to do the prepay, pay the full amount, wait till delivery of the ladder, use the same financing, and you could gain 2 budget years without making a payment. In other words, your delivery of the truck, the truck build is 11 to 12 months. So in 12 months when you took delivery, your clock would start ticking in, and in 12 months you would owe the payment. So you've got 2 options in this financing option to look at. I'll open it up for questions. I know either Robert or the manager has an ordinance and a resolution to present to you also.
Yeah. If I could, while Robert's coming up, I would just, Robert, you want to come up and talk about the ordinance? Robert? Yes.
Chief, can we just get clear that the price that you gave us is good from now until September 30th, and then you said there would be a price increase after September 30th?
Yes, sir.
So can you tell us about what the initial savings is?
So you're looking, if you do not do the discount, you're looking at roughly $100,000 savings. Excuse me, you're looking at $62,000 savings. If you take the discount, if you took the financing option through Financial Freedom and you did the prepay, or either we did financing and did the prepay, then it would be, if you did the prepay, you would be saving roughly $100,000.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I wanted to say too, while Robert was coming up, Lee and I have met several times on this, reviewed the numbers in detail. I'm convinced he's begged, borrowed, and stolen every coupon and discount he could get at this point, and has found us the best deal we can find. And so for that reason, I'm going to support it. I also say, and he has my full support for this, and I'd also say that we don't take delivery till next year, as he mentioned. So I think the key tonight, Lee, if you'll reiterate that, I think is that we can make a decision by September 30th. And that, as Robert, I think, will explain, we have a couple more weeks to decide how we're going to finance and do this thing. Is that correct, Lee?
Correct. That is correct. And I will say this, and there's, so from May or June, when we met with council in the budget meetings, from then until now, I did work with Adam on some of this stuff. We did find a demo that met our criteria. And we were close. I had it scheduled to come here, but it got sold before it got here. And so we were looking in the 1.8 range for that one. And so I'll give it to Atlantic. They have worked with me. I've worked on these numbers, and we've got a very good figure if we sign the paperwork for the purchase by September 30th. I feel very good about that. And we have a long relationship with this vendor.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we have two items in there related to the fire truck. We have an adoption of a budget ordinance, and what we're doing is we're appropriating fund balance to cover the purchase price, the full purchase price of the vehicle, in addition to an allowance for the tag and tax fees. If council recalls, we also already had $125,000 in the budget, in the current year budget. So we're only having to do a budget amendment for $1,725,000. All right. So that's where that number's coming from. We're getting to $1,850,000. That's taking basically that full purchase price and putting in an allowance for the DMV piece of it. The second item is the actual reimbursement resolution. What we anticipate doing here is whether we prepay the full purchase price up front, or we make a down payment, or we pay half or whatever we do and pay the rest of it off. When we get delivered, we plan on reimbursing ourselves through a financing arrangement. So we will recoup from the financing proceeds, we'll reimburse ourselves and replenish fund balance. But we need to put a purchase order in place for the full purchase price, encumber the funds, so we can issue a full PO to the vendor for the full purchase price. And so what we're doing is we're asking council to approve both the budget ordinance tonight as well as the reimbursement resolution. We're not asking for any approval at this moment in terms of the actual finance agreement. We'll come back at a later date as to whether we decide to go with Freedom Financial or we do, private placement through another bank or whatever.
Any questions for finance? Mr. Holder?
My understanding in talking to Robert, our best bet is to go ahead and use the fund balance to buy the truck. And then as we can, replace it back into the fund balance. Is that
the reimbursement resolution?
And that's what the resolutions say.
That's what the reimbursement resolution's for. That's the purpose of it.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll turn it over to council for their deliberation.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we adopt ordinance 2020-09-08.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance 2020-09-08. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Mayor, I make a motion we adopt Resolution 2020-33.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of the reimbursement resolution 2020-33. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Chief, thank y'all. All right, up next is the water reclamation update. JD?
Water reclamation update, the program is rolling along. Last meeting, we talked about advertising for the ECA transmission line design, and that has been done and is being advertised now. Also for the mid-level staff assistant program manager, that has been done and is underway. As I told you last time, we will be procuring probably a record number of easements for the town at one time, and that is underway, and we will start that acquisition here in a couple weeks. Parker Poe has finished all the deed research. Withers and Ravenel has finished all the plats, and so we'll be starting to deal with property owners in the next coming weeks. So that is underway for your reference. Our final EA, environmental assessment, has been submitted and is under review. We had a financial discussions meeting today about our options for financing. Again, it's the biggest history in the town's, biggest project in the town's history, around $120 million of project that we'll have to finance. So that's a big deal, and that's underway and going well. And finally, our 30% design is basically complete, and we're doing our final page turn tomorrow. So within the month, I think we'll be ready to advertise for our design build constructor for the plant itself. So quick update, but just letting you know, a lot of moving parts. And as I've talked about before, things have kind of came to a point with this environmental assessment, which y'all see the public hearing for it next month. But then as soon as we finish that, it's going to branch off in 4 or 5 different directions that'll run concurrent with each other. So that's the quick update. Be glad to take any questions.
Sounds good. Any questions or comments from council? All right, thank you, JD, for that update. Up next is the resolution in support of the water tank funding.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rich Capola, Deputy Town Manager. Before you, you have a request to support a resolution for an application to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. The intent of this would be to apply for funding to build an additional elevated storage tank within our water system. By requirements of operating the system, we're required to have a certain amount of elevated storage, and based on our growth, we foresee a need for this project in the near future. So the fall funding round is due by the end of this month, so we ask that you support the application to State Revolving Fund for the elevated storage tank.
All right, questions or comments for Rich?
I could ask, Rich, do you need to make a comment about reading that into the CIP too, for the sake of the?
Yes, just to confirm, for this project, that the adopted, the current CIP that's shown on the screen here is formally, or is adopted as part of the action tonight as well, confirming that this project is a need. CIP.
Yeah.
While she's bringing that up, I do also want to note, we are also submitting on the clean water side of the SRF this round again for the wastewater treatment plant project, but that's a separate funding, and you've already approved the application for that.
Right. As remember, the state requires a resolution by the council in order to make the application for the low interest loan, as well as the technicality Rich just mentioned of making sure, verifying that it is in the CIP, so.
So that item highlighted in yellow indicates the elevated storage tank project with the funding and expenditure in fiscal year 21.
Gotcha. Any questions or comments for Rich? Not, thank you, Rich. I'll turn it over to the council for their action.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve resolution 2020-34.
Second.
Motion and a second for the approval of the adoption of the resolution 2020-34. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Up next, we're going to get a park and recreation bond update.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Pleasure to be before you all this evening. Just wanted to bring you all up to speed on some of the work that's been taking place behind the scenes as we've been moving the bond projects along, and shortly we'll be bringing those consultants from you guys and ask y'all to make some hopefully not difficult decisions. But Joshua Baird and I have been working with HH Architecture and McAdams Landscape Architects and Civil Engineers to do both the planning for the horizontal piece, in other words, the park development, as well as the vertical piece, potential buildings that we would construct as a part of the bond-funded projects. Our marching orders to those two firms has been to take the preliminary work that was completed by Sage Design, going all the way back to our master plan that's roughly 10 years old now, and then the addendum that we did for that in prep for the bond process was to take the work that they had done and turn that into essentially 30% of design. So in other words, take us roughly a third of the way into the design process. The purpose for going 30% of the way into the design process is that gives us enough information that we have solid budget numbers that we can then present to y'all to make those difficult decisions as to how we're going to structure and select the projects. But at the same time, it also gives us an opportunity to hit the pause button and maybe choose delivery methods as we explore the benefits of those to us in those individual processes. Also on their to-do list was to help the staff in ultimately selecting which projects to put together in which package. Our financial consultant, their name is escaping me, Davenport, excuse me, thank you, somebody said it, has put together a model that shows our essential bond capacity or borrowing capacity if we do sales, either 2 sales or 3 sales, and it varies by which year we do that, so that we need to select projects that fit into the bond dollar available that we've got. So that's another big significant part of the work of both HH Architecture and McAdams as they prep that work for us. Our next step internally is we'll go before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with those 2 consultants on Monday. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board is serving in a dual role as the steering committee for these bond projects, and this will be the first time that they've had an opportunity to convene with the consultants. Obviously, we've been delayed like much of the rest of the world due to the COVID, and as they take their first stab at all these projects and help prioritize those, that'll lead into secondary and tertiary meetings that'll involve some of the other citizen groups that have been involved and our partners with us on these projects as well. And throughout this process, we plan on coming back and doing a minimum of quarterly updates before y'all, unless you say, hey, we're tired of seeing Scott. And then otherwise, we'll update you as you desire. But at this point in time, I'll just kind of open it up for questions if y'all have any for me or for Joshua at this time.
Good work. Questions or comments for staff? Mr. Granis.
Scott, will the meeting on Monday be a virtual meeting or will it be a live meeting?
Is it going to be in person? Okay. It is at 6 p.m.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Thompson.
I just want to thank Scott and his group for keeping this on track, and this is a very important project the voters went to the polls and chose for us to do. And with all the craziness going on in the world, you and your group have kept a good focus on it and keeping us moving forward, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good work.
One quick thing I'll highlight, the center picture is Harmony Playground. That picture was taken today. So, Harmony Playground, really coming along.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm looking at the football field. I'm like, that don't look like Harmony Playground. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Thank you. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. That's great work. You know, I just think it's fair to say that, you know, just because we were in a period where all of our recreation, you know, was closed, it didn't mean that our people weren't still doing good work and planning for the future. So I appreciate that. I think we all do.
We about rubbed the finish off the stable.
Okay, up next under new business is a budget amendment ordinance, police asset forfeiture funds.
Good evening, Robert McKay, Finance Director. Tonight we're asking council to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $19,500 to appropriate fund balance from a special revenue fund that resulted from the collection of prior year proceeds from the federal government's asset forfeiture program. Those are basically drug monies that were confiscated. The town received $25,000 last year from the federal program, and we're asking for $19,500 to appropriate to cover a vehicle upfit, as well as some equipment for the police department special enforcement team.
All right, any questions or comments for staff? All right, thank you, Robert. Turn it over to council for their discussion. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I think that Chief Myhan and his men and women worked hard to get that money, and it can only be used for law enforcement purposes. So I have no problem endorsing and approving this request. I'll make a motion we approve Ordinance 2020-0909.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the approval, the adoption of the ordinance 2020-0909. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Up next is staff reports, beginning with the manager.
Okay, let's go. Again, about 5 or 6 kind of major bullet points. First, I want to give you good news. We don't always get good news, and it's not crisis news. It's just kind of people doing their jobs. I want to first recognize Parks and Rec. I think, Mr. Mayor, you said that earlier. If you guys remember, right before Labor Day, the governor said we're going to go on about 2 days' notice to open our parks up. And both Scott Barnhart and Stacy Beard did a great job with Scott with doing the regular inspections, hustled out there with a checklist, not just COVID, but all of safety. Found a few problems, got some corrected, got some not corrected. But he and Stacy did a great job of getting that to the public. And happy to say that through the Labor Day weekend, we had no reports of injuries and only happy citizens from everything we've heard. So really want to give them a pat on the back. When you say, Mr. Mayor, you close things down for 6 months, you don't know what's out there, and Scott and his crew did a really good job. The other thing, second one I want to give you on good news is I think the Clayton Center. I've worked a lot with Scotty Henley on his program. He's got a live streaming. He's basically turned got some grant money and turned our stage into a studio, and he's got some national and regional acclaim for the efforts he put forth. And I'm not so sure you council or the citizens really realize how much prestige and creativity he's used to keep the stage going, to keep the arts going. So I really want to recognize him for, again, nothing necessarily heroic or out of the ordinary, but just doing his job very, very well, I think. The other thing, the third one I'd give you is the water system. And some of that was with Rich talked about, but really recognize Byron Pullman and Joshua Baird for their job. You guys have been briefed on that. We had a bit of a crisis and we got that resolved in about a week and a half in a very favorable way with local and state authorities. And we're in a good position for short-term and long-term, but had Byron not done his good work and Joshua his, which was just line of duty type of stuff, regular normal thing, we wouldn't have got where we are. But all three of these, there's a lot more going on, but these three just stuck out with me, and three I wanted to give you guys as examples of some good work that were happening. A second point I'll mention is some of the financial information that I've been reviewing. We are at the end of the first fiscal quarter, as hard as that is to believe. July, August, and September have gone by. And what the budget basically says is we'll take a hard look midway through the year and revise the budget because of the COVID, and I think there's about 8 points of uncertainty we identified in the budget to kind of upgrade that and review that. A couple things I'll give you as far as an update. We do have some challenges and some capital projects. Scott mentioned some of the parks and rec stuff. We're going to have to look and make sure we can fit all that into the bond agreement and do all the things we want to do. We've got some challenges with our AMI meter project. And in the general fund, I just mentioned the water system. So kind of those are three capital things I'll cite as examples of things we're assessing now to make sure in December y'all know potential impacts as we get through the first quarter of the year, but just where the fiscal impacts are going. And then you're going to hear from Blake Mills on the bulky waste. Just the same with water. With our bulky waste, we've had a spike in amount of trash being collected. COVID, good housing market, whatever you want to call it. But it's created some real budget challenges with the current budget, with the bulky waste. And he'll give you a brief summary of that. We're not all the way resolved with that, but I did think we're at a point where he could give you a quick summary in just a few minutes, and we can fill you in and give you some options at the next meeting. And simple things. I'll give Councilman Bunn the first credit for this. I know Councilman Gratis was in this, but the grass cutting on Highway 70, you guys noticed it. It seems small, but staff did realize we did have a problem with the grass cutting out there, and it will cost us some money to get that resolved. We switched vendors, and the current vendor's not doing the job that they should be, and so we are moving to correct that. But again, trying to get to that sooner than later in our budget so that you guys are well informed as we head through mid-year what the potential impact would be. Now, if some of that sounds like challenge, it is, and when things go bad, they usually don't get better, they get worse. And so we're watching that. But the good news is our sales tax revenues are up again. So in fact, I think Robert and Nancy told me they were the highest they've ever seen in the history of the town.
Wow.
So if we all kind of think back about what we thought about COVID and everything going flat, our numbers are all trending good and bad like this. So, but just another thing that we're going to all have to deal with budget as we go to mid-year adjustment. So we're working as a staff on that for you guys to make sure you have the numbers. Third thing I'll mention is the public access to buildings. We've gone back and forth about when the governor may say things can be opened. We've already seen in some of our facilities like Parks and Rec that as soon as announcements were made that even senior citizens wanted access to our facilities and wondered why they weren't open sooner and more accessible. So staff has been taking some actions, but we want to work behind the scenes and let you guys know. Mr. Mayor, we've heard everybody say we'd rather be a little behind the schedule than ahead of it, but we want to also be prepared, and we are looking at how we look at all of our facilities now under some reopening scenarios so that we may have some 60 or 90-day plans to start slow and then gradually build to something. But we are going to do it safely, but we want to be prepared for our public to get the needs they do. I'll mention this. There are some good lessons learned. The library's partially opened a couple days a week. I think Scotty's been doing some stuff with some of his contractors with thermometers and things like that. I know the fire department has. So there are some lessons learned that we've already talked about that we can build on as we look at those plans. But just let you know we're working on those plans. Fourth thing would be 3 areas of assessment that I'm looking at, and I'll kind of go from the probably the more internal one first. One is planning. As you guys know, we've got the 160D ordinances that are take effect January 2nd, and Samantha and our staff are working diligently on that. We also have a comp plan going on. We also have revisions to the UDO that'll be happening next year, and we also have normal ordinances. And so we've been meeting with developers. We got a survey back today of how we're doing in the market, which was very good, by the way, our response to developers. So we're proud of that. But we need to keep getting better. And so that's one topic that, because it's kind of moving as we go, I'm working very closely as a manager with Samantha and her staff to make those changes. And again, with Rich as well, because he's looking at infrastructure, and Joshua, but how do we meet those planning challenges? But we are assessing it, and we are looking for improvements. The second kind of assessment is with finance, and I've met with Robert and Nancy, and they see some things. I want to be clear, it's not accounting, it's not how we're doing our books. We're doing great audits, and we're doing great that way. But as I've mentioned before, we are growing. And so we've got a lot of work coming with the new program next year, our contracting processes, our general procurement processes, how we're buying things, how we're storing things, we're getting bigger. And so we're going to start there with looking at our internal staff's opinions of what we need to do. But I will probably be back to you guys. In fact, I plan to be with maybe bringing a third party in to review some of those results so that we build a list of activities that will go way beyond my tenure. But we can at least get the activities and priorities and start on them, and they'll be finished later. But just another step in continuing improvement for finance. And I think that'll be more joint. The third one will be with police. And again, I don't want to go back into procedures with that. I think we're running a fine department, and we've got very minimal complaints out in the public. But there are some growth pains there. I think you've seen that with asset forfeiture. I want to look at equipment and technology needs. I want to look at training needs. I want to look at our organizational structure. And I want to look at the overall operating context in the sense of we are a community of 25,000, and we're not Chicago, we're not LA, but we want a top-end police force. So what are the things we need to do to make good decisions moving forward? I know the chief has some opinions, and I have some opinions, and some of you may have opinions, but I think it's important we bring an outside group in to kind of do their own assessment and give us some insights as to where we ought to be on some of these topics. So 3 assessments. Planning going to be internal. Finance will start internal and maybe get some third-party opinion. And police will probably be more external at this point in the process. The last thing I'll note is I've got a couple probably policies that are sitting there. I've met with Jeffra on health and safety issues, not just COVID, but some policies that may have been adopted in the past. You guys know I'm big into health and safety. We should all go to work, home safer than we come to work, or at least as safe. So we'll probably move some of those policies forward. And then some things I've talked about policy-wise with Stacy on our social media policies, both our internally to pronounce good news and make sure everybody's fairly represented across the board. But also we've got a wide variety of how people handle their own personal social media, whether they're talking about town business or just their own business. So we need to make sure most organizations, public and private, have some restrictions on how much individuals can talk about their work. So we want people to talk about it, but we want to do it through Stacy and the PIO program and look to formalize some of those policies as well as health and safety. So with that, we've been busy. Staff's been great. I think we're working through a lot of issues that were needing to be addressed, and I think we're on a good path to have the right information to you guys at the right time. So I'll stop there and take any questions you may have.
Questions or comments? All right, thank you, JD, for the update. Town attorney?
No report.
Town clerk?
No reports, thank you.
Other staff, moving on with the bulky waste update, Blake Mills.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Blake Mills, Assistant Director of Public Services. I got Steve Blaska with me, who's the Manager of Public Works Operations. We're going to talk to you about bulky waste. Our current bulky waste program started in July of 2017 with All-Star. And it started pretty modestly at $52,000. It grew pretty modestly as well. In the next fiscal year, it's $61,000. But then in fiscal year 20, we saw a big spike. And basically the last half of 2020, we saw big spikes. We're up to $102,000. And if these trends continue, we're looking at to go potentially as high as $184,000. We budgeted $80,000 in fiscal year '21. So we're looking at potentially $104,000 budget overrun in this one line item. Now, it's a $2.2 million contract, so that's not that significant, but just this one item, it's significant. And at the current rates, we're looking at exceeding the budget probably in bulky waste around mid-December. So if we look at the chart, I'm not sure if I've got a way to move that ahead.
Yes. You have a clicker there on the table?
Oh, this is what this is. Thank you. We do. All right. We're showing a chart of the bulky waste by monthly pickups for basically 2020. What we can see there is really in the month of January, you see a big spike there. And then we're seeing a continued spike for March, April, and May. And then in the month of June, we had a record of 671 total pickups. We're talking $16,000 for bulky waste pickups just one month. When you look at August of this year, we had another record, which was August of 2019 to August of 2020. It went 2.52 times greater. So significant increases in bulky waste pickups. So it doesn't look like it's slowing down right now. Now, why is it increasing? We think it's related to COVID because people are home, working from home, doing special projects, cleaning out storage areas. But our contractor also thinks it's possibly related to some rentals, that we have a lot of areas in town, such as Riverwood and Cobblestone, where there's a lot of move-ins and move-outs, generating a lot of bulky waste as well. And as people learn more and more about the program, talking to neighbors about what they're doing, because they're all sitting at home, they also start using bulky waste because they see it at the curb. Now, if we do a comparison of what everybody else is doing in Wake County, and we also looked at Smithfield, so it's 13 municipalities. We got Apex and Cary and Knightdale, they're charging for it. So they charge the residents directly for it. The ones that are similar are really Fuquay, Holy Springs, Zebulon, Smithfield, and Garner. And really Garner is almost identical to Clayton's program. They use All-Star. They pick up weekly, and they don't charge for it. But the one significant difference between Garner's program and Clayton's program is how it's set up in the contract. They don't pay for each individual pickup like they do in Clayton. We pay $24.45 for each pickup. That's either one pickup of a large item or two smaller items. In Garner, it's all built up into their unit price for solid waste pickup. So more pickups, no change in price. So they have no change in their costs this year because bulky waste pickup is up. Bulky waste pickup is up in Garner. It's very similar to Clayton. They don't track it individually, but we're up about 13% in volume for solid waste. They're up 12%, almost exactly the same. Just a different experience because of how the contract is set up. So we're very unique in that respect, that we're having that type of experience. Many others do it in-house. So for them, it's just more staff time. It's dumping fees, but dumping fees are not a big budget component of this. And more staff time is already in the budget, so they're still not experiencing the same issues. So if we look at really what are our options, we could charge separately for bulky waste. We could also do it in-house. We could also do it less frequently. We could even stop doing it. Another option is to negotiate a new price directly with their contractor. So really all our options, we're looking at them. They're all on the table, we're reviewing them all. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back to you at a future date and give you an update. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So Blake and Steve, I think, really found this out a few weeks ago with the curves. We quickly talked about some options, kind of a business case evaluation, and we met with the contractor late last week. We don't want to talk about contract negotiations here in the public forum, and we're authorized to do that, so we are working through that. But I thought we had been moving this process along fairly rapidly to try to get ourselves back in budget, and they've done a great job with that. And so I did want to share it tonight and give you all the assurance we were looking to address it. we were going to move fast, and we don't want to get ahead of you guys. We can do this administratively, but we want you guys to be informed and know what we're trying to do. We'll probably do the same thing when we get something on the grass cutting as well, the grass mowing and the medians and whatnot, but this one was ready, so we wanted to bring it to you just to give you an information item. So Blake and Steve have done a great job getting all this together and getting the contractor in here so fast to talk about those negotiations, so.
Thank you.
Questions or comments for staff? Mr. Grandis?
Blake, when you mentioned that Garner amortizes this fee into their rates, I'm going to make the assumption that Garner's standard rates are higher than ours. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, their rates are higher than ours. Theirs are $935 and ours are like $665.
Okay.
But we also pay, Garner doesn't pay for dumping fees. We pay for dumping fees in Clayton. So our rate, if you factor that in, our rate's a little bit higher related to that as well. But when you look at apples to apples comparisons, Garner is paying a bulky waste fee built into theirs. So they do have, the rates are higher because bulky waste is included.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you so much. Thank you both. Okay, up next is a Campo lap update.
Joshua Barrett, Town Engineer. I want to give a quick update regarding the lap through Campo. Quick background. Many of you are familiar with the program, but LAP stands for Locally Administered Projects Program. It's through our local MPO, Campo, adopted in 2010 when this started with Campo. It's a way to prioritize and program in local transportation projects, transportation, pedestrian, and other transit projects. It's a competitive funding program that is administered by the MPO. Projects are funded using different federal funding sources, and there's usually at least a minimum 20% local match involved with it. For example, some of the previous lap projects that Clayton has performed is Clayton Community Connector, some Greenway there, Front Street Extension, and also the current project, Sam's Branch Greenway, are examples of lap projects that the town has been working on in the past and currently working on. The submittal process, the FY 2022 call for projects is currently open. It began in August. Part of the process is to do what they call a pre-submittal meeting with Campo. So that is where staff go before Campo staff and propose a project, get some feedback, talk through it, and get some feedback from Campo on whether the project, how it may score out, and kind of what are the chances or what things may we need to consider in a formal application. And then the formal applications are due at the end of October. So to date, just kind of walk through what staff has worked on. We've pulled some staff and got staff together to talk through what potential projects could be this. We've looked at our CIP, we've looked at other needs, and just had a collaborative effort to bring and pool staff to figure out, what are potential projects. We looked through those and really tried to determine which were LAP eligible or eligible for this type of funding source. And then we went through a prioritization. So we had about 10 projects that we felt were LAP eligible. We went through a prioritization process facilitated by interim town manager, and then we came out of that. We came up with 3 that were staff's top recommendations that I want to update council on tonight. Getting back to, I'm going to just walk through the prioritization process. We went through it. There's multiple ways to look at it. You can obviously look at prioritization by ranking by staff, and I'm going to kind of flip through some of these. You can see the 10 the projects are listed across the bottom there that we were looked at. Understanding difference in different functional groups, and as we look between the different options, looking at multi-criteria, you can have weighted criteria such as compliance, level of service, health and safety, O&M, cost efficiencies, and then also the environment. So playing into different weighted factors, that there's multiple ways to look at this. So without digging into it, I want to come back to just kind of what staff's top three came out of that process. The process was twofold. One, to come up with those recommendations, but it was also a kind of a pilot project for us to be able to get staff together and go through the prioritization. Obviously, it helped with LAP, but it also could be something that we utilize and we really start working towards on our CIP, going through a similar process. There's value in some amount of management science to us, and we could now take that same process and apply it to our CIP. It also brings all the departments together, and so we really understand what are the needs of other departments and being able to weight those and what are the kind of town-wide needs across the town, so bringing everyone together. So three of the projects that came out are the Northern Connector. It's a transportation project connecting 42 East over to Covered Bridge. It would tie into Covered Bridge where the Steeplechase development is realigning Covered Bridge. It would tie in at that location. Full build out would be a 4-lane median divided 110-foot right of way. There could be an option that it's a phased approach where there are 2 lanes that are built and then a later phase when the additional 4 lanes are put in. Approximately 2.2 miles and estimated cost anywhere from 37 to 42 million, depending on if we look at that a phased approach where we get 2 lanes in versus the full 4-lane median divided. Again, lab projects, 20% minimum local match. We're looking at about 6 to 9 million is what the town would need to do as far as a match to see this project through. In the town's adopted CIP, there is 25 million in FY 2025 that is already programmed in. And this also is a part of the adopted Johnston County's comprehensive transportation plan. Here's a proposed alignment that we've been working on and looking at, so you can see the alignment proposed that would go from 42 over to Covered Bridge and the connectivity on the northeastern side of Clayton. A second project that came on top that staff is considering is some bridge replacements along the Mountains to Sea Trail. It would be a project to replace 3 existing wooden bridges. All 3 are nearing the end of their lifespan. The best I can tell, they're probably at least 20 years old. Due to their age, we're seeing some increased maintenance needs associated with those. They're older wooden bridges. One of the projects that we are looking at would be to construct 3 new steel span bridges across that. Estimated project would be about 1.4 million. There is currently no funding for this. This is a project that's not in the CIP. We do not have anything programmed in for the replacement of these bridges as they are nearing the end of their lifespan and the maintenance that we are seeing with those. Local match would be just under about $300,000. Location of these along the Mountains to Sea Trail here, just another blow up would be, it's back behind Riverwood. There's 3 of them. We would propose the project to do all 3, just from a constructability standpoint and being able to get 3 bridges in there versus doing one at a time. We feel that trying to lump those together is a wise decision as far as constructability through here. A third project I wanted to put before you is an extension of the Mountains to Sea Trail along 42 East. It would be from East Front Street down to Glen Laurel, along 42, and provide connectivity basically to downtown, to the shops at Glen Laurel area and Glen Laurel Road. This extension would also become that Mountains to Sea Trail heading down towards the river. On the northwest side of 42, this is currently a project in DOT's STIP, EB 6016. The plans currently is subject to change right away in 2027 and construction in 2028. So a ways out, but it is in the STIP. The section's approximately 1 mile. We're estimating total project at about 2 million and a local match of 400,000 roughly. So next steps, we have pre-submittal meetings with the Campo staff on these 3 projects. They are this Thursday, September 24th. Following those, we plan to come back before council with feedback that we received from Campo staff once we discuss these 3 projects, and then we will look to provide recommendations to town council and seek your full support for submitting an actual application by the end of October on 1, 2, or 3 of these projects. So just a quick update on kind of where things are at, and more to come following our pre-submittal meetings with Campo on the 24th, but wanted to provide an update and at least put the 3 projects that staff are considering with Campo staff before you at this time. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll take them.
All right, questions or comments? Mr. Granis.
Josh, I think these are 3 really great proposals to submit, and I think we got a really good shot, possibly at 2 of them for sure. So, but good job there. Good job.
Thanks, sir. And I'm like, the engineer in you made sure before you sat down last time that that was working properly. And then our fire chief came up and completely destroyed it.
You know, I tried to fix it.
I noticed the engineer in you tried to make sure that it was functioning properly. Thank you, Joshua. On the topic of library, Joy, if I could ask you to come to the podium. I would just like to ask for an update on how it's going at the library, and I understand that you guys are now by appointment, and how is all that working?
So in June, we started doing curbside services, which is no touch. People call in, they put a hold on our books, and they come in. In June and July, our numbers were pretty low, but they rose 66% in August, so we had a much higher rate of people coming in. We'd been wanting to open for a while, but every time the governor pushed back his date, we had to push ours back. So we discussed with other department heads and Adam and Nancy the option of doing appointments by appointment only. And we started that on September maybe 2nd or 3rd, the first Tuesday in September. So what we do is 10 to 2 and 1 to 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We let people make appointments. In our front room, we can have no more than 8 people at a time. That includes computer users. And then we allow 1 family at a time to browse in the children's room. We created 2 self-check stations, and when people come in, we always kind of go out and greet them. We have a mask on. We tell them you have 20 minutes to come in. You put your books that you don't want to get, you put them on a cart. We clean them after you're done. We help them look up items, and it has been super positive. We have not had to give 1 mask away. Everybody comes masked up. They're excited, they're happy to come in. We have not reached capacity for any of our appointments yet, so we have like 3 to 5 people, which is to be expected. I've been in contact with other directors around the state, and they're getting pretty much the same kind of reaction. People are not rushing through the doors, especially if we don't have seating out, so people are not invited to sit and stay just because we don't have the space to do that. But they're coming in, they're checking stuff out. We do have some patrons who, for the whole time, like we have a few people who just want to come and see us. We're their social outlet for the week. So I need to send a picture, but we have one, Mr. Bivacqua comes every week, and he, one of our staff members knitted him a little mask with a funny mouth sticking his tongue out on it and gave it to him. So we still have people who come and just see us to say hey through the door. Something else that we've been doing, we have a ton of online programs right now. I don't know if you can pull up any of Laura's preschool story times, but she's created a whole classroom. I think not that one. Go up a little bit more. Right there. If you click on that one, let's just show you real quick. I did not know I was going to do this, by the way, so this is all off the cuff. But if you click on any of these, you can hear her read the books. If you click on the boom box, there are songs. If you click on, there she is talking. She has a baby that's about, we're September, so her baby is 9 months old, and her baby does all of her baby story times with her. We've started doing like craft days. We have a teen craft night tonight that's going on. We have an adult book club that's going on tonight. We started doing our page burners again with Facebook Live recently, so we're busy.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you for the update.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yay! Woo, libraries. So that's it. I didn't touch anything, so I'm not going to clean anything.
All right. Is there comments for library? Awesome, thank you. All right, up next, under other business, I'll open the floor for informal discussion and public comment.
I believe the first public comment is tonight from Mr. Timothy Weiss.
Thank you for letting me come back and speak. I didn't have the opportunity to stay later 2 weeks ago, but on the video, I watched as Mr. Granis, you made a couple of comments about Ms. Caitlin and myself, and I was wondering if you could clarify both of those comments for us, if you would, please. The one question I had regarding your first comment was that we weren't aware of the contract. Could you please explain why that's the case?
I would prefer not to do that in a public setting, but I'd be happy to meet with you privately.
Well, you made it in a public setting. You made that comment in a public setting. As we came up, all of us, we all had a discussion, showed you what our feelings were. I wasn't alone, but you said something about we were not understanding of the contract, or we're not aware of the contract. It was something like that. We can go back to the video if you wanted, but...
That's why I would prefer to do that in a private setting.
Okay,
we could look at that video together, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you.
Here's the point I'm going to make about that. I believe the reason was the contractual agreement with Adam Lindsay in 2016 was not completely public knowledge. Is that right?
I can't respond to that.
Okay, when we pull up the contract, there's nothing in there that talks about his severance, and there was nothing in there that talks about his guaranteed 4.5% raise. So probably what we're saying is, to you, here at the town of Clayton, we would like, from now on, that if we do have such a contract, we would like it all made public. Not just part of it, but all of it. Bits and pieces, everything made public to the people of this town. I think moving forward, that's the only fair thing to do. Because you're right, we had no understanding of any side agreement or private agreement or whatever that agreement was. We weren't made aware, and I don't think that's a good thing, okay? So if it would be something that you all could table, yes, sir? Yes, sir.
I agree with you. I was not aware that that total contract was...
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
I agree with you. I was not aware that the total contract was not public.
Thank you, sir.
I feel like it was public. It may not have been public enough for people to really understand it.
Thank you, sir.
I am not in the position to try to hide things from the residents of the town of Clayton.
Yes.
And for this council, we have done the 3-2 vote. And the whole council has reached the point we want to move on.
Okay.
We want to do what's best for the town of Clayton.
Okay.
That's our goal.
Okay. I understand. I appreciate that, and I do too. The problem with it was his comments at the end of the thing was addressed to me and Ms. Caitlin. I don't think that we had a chance to respond as we had walked out the door when everything was said.
Well,
so that's the only reason I'm bringing it up tonight. I won't say it again. There's no reason to. I'm only here to talk about that plus one other thing.
My other comment is personally,
yes, sir.
I'm glad we had that in the contract.
Okay.
Because it will take Adam a while to get another job.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yes, sir.
And if I was applying for a job today, I would try to negotiate that in my contract.
Okay. All right. You only get what you negotiate, right?
Right.
That's it. That's at the end. That's how you do it. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that very much. The other reason I'm here, I wanted to talk about something. The gentleman who was here before, the librarian, he was talking about, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Josh? Josh, thank you. Josh was mentioning something about the trail. Could I ask a show of hands between you three and everybody else? How many use the trail on a regular basis? 1, 2, 3, 4? Me. I'm there almost every day. Okay. I like the idea of fixing the bridges because not only are they worn out, but they're also a safety hazard. And that's probably more important than being worn out. Okay? It would be terrible for somebody to be riding their bicycle, hit one of those bridges, because the things wore out, they fall over, hit their head, next thing you know, they have major physical rehabilitation. So if we can get those bridges fixed, that would be great. But the reason I'm really here is, have you all smelled the trail recently? Have you smelled what's coming out of all the manholes from our wastewater treatment plant? Okay? In the last 3 weeks that I've been there, and it could be part and parcel to the hot weather that we've been having, but there have been tremendous odors coming out of that trail to where it doesn't make it as a pleasant walk, ride, or whatever. And it's pretty much when you get down to that treatment center at the end of Sam's Branch, head down, cross over the bridge, and then head out past Riverwood. Once you get past Riverwood, you don't smell it because that's where the sewage treatment thing goes. So I guess my question as a concerned citizen, is that normal to have that kind of smell emanate from all those different manholes covers? Okay? So
I would say I doubt it's normal.
Okay.
But I'm not the professional.
Yeah.
But I do know that all of those manholes are sealed. So we will have to get
then maybe what
unsealed and see what underlying.
It may not be, maybe I'm mistaken, and maybe it's coming from the trap vents, the big pipe trap vents that are right next to each of those. It could be coming from that. And it could be that the traps just need to be cleaned. It could be as simple as that. I'm hoping it is. But it can be really, really nauseating when you're running or walking and you smelling that stuff. And maybe because my nose is so big, I smell it more than most people. But I'm going to tell you, I have noticed it very much in the last 3 weeks especially.
Awesome.
When COVID first started getting here, I did every day, and I'm still doing almost every day. But it's just in the last 3 weeks it's gotten worse. So I wanted to bring that to y'all attention. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you. I think staff has made a note and they'll look into that.
That's all I had today. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And next up, we have a resident who prefers that we don't use their name, but we have a resident from Rollingwood Subdivision.
Good evening and thank you. I wanted to ask you first, as a citizen of Clayton, what can I speak of here at the council?
What can you speak
about?
So this is a public comment section, and you are able to provide any comments that you would like to give up to 3 minutes.
Well, you didn't give up to 3 minutes to that gentleman, so the next question is
It's up to my discretion, and if what you're sharing has value to me and what I consider to be value to our citizens, we'll definitely have you speak for as long as you need to, but it is at my discretion, so.
Okay, so the next question is, before I get started, that this is of value. And this is something that happened to me. And I'd like to relay it to you and give you, to be transparent of what happens behind closed doors. But the reason why I want to tell this tale, to expose myself, is to let you know what needs to happen in this town, in the city. So I would like to proceed, Mayor, if you would allow.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm a little nervous, but I'm about to expose me. As a citizen for almost 20 years now, I have never incurred any trouble until about 6 years ago, when I met a soulless creature by the name of Troy Nakia Jones, whose 42nd birthday happens to be today. He gave my personal information to Terry Chappelle of Clayton, Marcus Williams, Terry's cousin, and Jessica Baker of Four Oaks. All of these criminals had their hands in my bank account. And thanks to Troy, he provided them my social security number, my date of birth, and my full name. This band of thieves, people led by Mr. Jones, stole close to $60,000 from me. Not $60, $60,000. And when I went to the Clayton police on separate occasions, I was initially met with ridicule, a level of suspicion, and apathy. 2 years later, I have yet to receive the help that I deserved. In fact, when the State Employees Credit Union weekly investigated by calling the Clayton Police Department, they were advised by someone at CPD that my issue was domestic, one which should have all the more reason caused them to investigate. But no one helped me. Instead, I was disparaged by SECU, and they allowed this band of thieves to continue to siphon all of my money from my bank account. And subsequently, the Johnston County Prosecutor's Office treated me with the same level of belligerence and apathy. I can only surmise that my treatment was based upon the narrative that other people have created about people who look like me and not like them, which could be considered as group thinking or racism. Choose your poison. I was held hostage in my home, beaten to the point of hiding myself from my relatives and feeling like I had nowhere to turn, because when one of the officers showed up to my home, I was cursed at, and they actually took the time to talk to him and told him to walk it off. And although I had physical signs of an attack, the officer allowed him to come back to my home and told me I had to file an eviction notice. Now, I'm a very private person, but I go to this exposed extreme, which has caused me some personal frostbite, to let you know that you must fund for more police and for training, especially regarding domestic abuse, because the police have a very hard job to do. And I think the Clayton Police Department is doing the best that they can. I was advised by CPD that they really didn't have enough man-hours to go through every debit that was stolen from my account through this cyber hijacking of my funds. I was also told by Clayton Police to just chalk it up as a loss, because unfortunately, at the time that this happened, my son, who lived in Texas, had a very severe accident which rendered him in a coma. And because I could not traverse Texas and North Carolina, I was told that maybe, in terms of choosing better friends, maybe you should just chalk this up. Maybe if it was $60, maybe if it was $600. But for it to be almost $60,000 that was stolen from me, it's unconscionable to even have suggested it. But the reason why I tell you my story is because I do believe that there needs to be some type of sensitivity training for whether it be a man or woman experiencing domestic violence. And because I'm a very proud and very private person, I hid behind my closed doors. And that's why it took all of me to come here and expose myself. So I want to let you know that I do support the police. The police are important. And their job, once again, is not easy. But because we are populating this city at a very rapid rate. What is the Clayton Police Department expected to do when you have this growth in population? What are we going to do to help them so that they are not stressed out and stretched to the limits? Because if they couldn't help me to trace every debit from my account, I don't see how they're going to be able to help the citizens here without additional police presence. And I get to my second point. And in regards to my second point, this relates to Rollingwood subdivision. It was created to condense the population of professional Black people in one area due to segregation. This was over 50 years ago. And as this population gets older, the offenses taken against the residents have mounted, particularly the most recent being the destruction of a once quaint community, which has been upended by Providence. And I don't blame Providence in as much that I say that the way things happened, he could have done better. And I don't want to mention any names, but they have blocked the roads, the only road out. And I spoke about this in December of 2019 in regards to my concern pertaining to that. And in regards to what they have done, they defaced a once quaint and graceful community by destroying the trees and natural scenery and increasing the population. The ecosystem has been upset by cutting down the old pines that allow deer, birds, etc. to live. There is now an overflow of mosquitoes because the birds have been driven away. They have nowhere to go but away in terms of the birds. And those trees have been replaced with townhomes and houses that are crammed together. The driveways are so short that these new residences are parking on the narrow street. And with these new residences, these people now walk their dogs through our neighborhood. And I just want to know, in regards to development, if you're going to condense so many people, why not have a dog run for people who enjoy their pets? I have 2 Chihuahuas, and thank God I have a backyard, but I also walk my dogs. I don't just let them stay in the backyard. So when these people are developing all these nice communities, once again, I assert that some of the things that should be in place for development should be at least a playground for the children. And for the dogs, in this case, where now we are overrun by people in those townhomes and their dogs, a dog run. And during this construction, once again, the only road out was often blocked with no flaggers to direct traffic. In fact, on September 16th, unfortunately, I had to drive on one of my neighbor's easement just in order to get around a truck that was parked parallel in the middle of the street. The only road in this subdivision is designated as private by the company who runs their heavy machinery at breakneck speed down the longest street in the subdivision. I have asked for speed bumps to deter people from driving so fast. I have also asked for a sign to indicate children at play, but that has fallen on deaf ears. My questions, I don't expect you to answer them, but I do hope that you consider my words. And you say that coming to the meetings is key. So I want to continue that because I do know progress is being part of the process, and I thank you for receiving my message.
Thank you. And your message is well received. Thank you.
Thank you. But I am hoping that you do get a domestic violence unit in the police department. It is very needed.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Is there anyone else for public comment?
That is all I have. Thank you.
All right. Move on to the council comments. Holder.
Mr. Mayor, I want to assure our town employees, our town staff, that nothing that's going on in the way of changes in any way should be received as a threat to them or to their jobs. We love our employees, we appreciate our employees, and we hope they continue to work for the town of Clayton.
Thank you, sir. Well stated. Anyone else? All right. If there's nothing else to come before this council, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night.